Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Okay, so before we get started, I have something very cool to share with everybody. So there is this company called Pop Culture Coffee, and they do these themed coffees based on things in pop culture, both for like the flavor coffees, but also like different kind of like fan merchandise. So for instance, I was sent this beautiful coffee mug by Pop Culture Coffee a few months ago, and I have just been dying to post about it because it's so cool. I literally use it every day. And we are going to be giving that away through Scream with Ryan C. Showers. So it's a giveaway time, woohoo! Okay, so there are going to be pictures on my Instagram, so go check it out. But in order to get your very own version of this mug, you need to go and follow me and follow official Pop Culture Coffee on Instagram. Under the post, tag 2 people, then share to your story. But seriously, I implore everybody to go to Pop Culture Coffee and use the code RCS25 to get 25% off of your entire order of all things Pop Culture Coffee, including this mug. So please go check it out, get your own mug, and send me your pictures. Like, I would love to see your pictures with this mug. Maybe I'll make a collage of everybody who sends in their picture with the mug. So that'd be great. Now, before I go any further, I need to thank the producers of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. They include Ashley Summers from the Squirrel and Spud Shop. She and I host a Scream game every Wednesday on Instagram, so please check that out. I also need to thank TJ Jones, who comes from the Box Office Buds podcast. He is responsible for all of the graphic design of Scream with Ryan C. Showers in terms of new episode cards on social media promotion. So thank you so much to TJ for all he does. I also need to thank contributors Mark Karim, Mark Vieira, and Joey Velisi. Joey Velisi is the guy who writes the scripts for Scream with Ryan C. Showers. Episode 112, we wrote a Scream 7 script, which I read out loud, about the end of the Carpenter sisters storyline. And then the sequel to that was called Screams. It was centered around the legacy of Gail Weathers. That's episode 155. And Joey is currently working on the final Scream, which this is a product that is going to examine the relationship, the marriage of Mark and Sidney. Unlike the real Scream 7, this will feature Mark Kincaid as Sidney's husband, and she won't have a teenage daughter. Both of her daughters will be young, so it'll be much different than the real Scream 7 we're going to get. But that is going to be coming to the podcast late summer, early fall, so please tune in for that. I need to thank everybody over at Patreon. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Mark Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Garrison Nichols, Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Noberini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Justin Weir, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. I guess I should change the name of the podcast to not Scream with Ryan C. Showers, but Scream with Ryan and Anthony. So I'm sitting here with my friend Anthony DePuzzo. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing good. That was very nice of you to say. I'm very excited to talk some Scream and horror news.
They're like the second gentleman of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. Like, you just kind of like naturally wiggle into, like into fun things. So, well, it's exciting as for OG fans, but also just enticing for other reasons. So, listener, we are going to be talking about interviews that Kevin Williamson and Guy Busick gave last week that were, talked about online, of course, and other small rumored details about Scream 7 and 8, which is fun, and some other things here and there. So it's just going to be the traditional Scream with Ryan C. Showers news episode because of, Anthony and I are recording this on June 3rd, just for perspective. So in case the world blows up tomorrow, sorry. But the news segment hasn't really been around for that long. So the first news segment went out on May 2nd. So this has literally been a month. And I feel like, first of all, I feel like I've been doing Friday episodes forever. And I feel like I've been doing news episodes also forever. So this is fun. And this is Anthony's second news episode.
By the way, I look forward to every Friday. I'm like, yes, right before the weekend, I get my horror news with Ryan.
Thank you. So, Anthony, before we get going, not only are you, my co-host, you've really elbowed Amar out of the way, man. Like, Amar,
I miss him, though.
You know what? If you sleep, you get pushed out of the way, Amar. So Anthony, where besides co-hosting with Ryan C. Showers, where else can they find you online?
For sure, yeah. I do a horror podcast with my buddy Nolan, Never Split Up podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, we always talk about a horror movie a week. We do some ranking episodes. We just shoot the shit and have a fun time. By the time this episode comes out, our newest episode is going to be our top 10 favorite horror movie chase scenes. So Scream fans will be delighted, and Halloween fans will be delighted to see that episode. I had a really fun time recording that last night. So look forward to that, and just subscribe if you can.
Please subscribe. Please go follow them and follow Anthony, specifically. He is such a cool person and honestly one of my favorite people to sit down and do this with, obviously because he's on so often. But Anthony, I have to ask, did Sidney in Stab 3 make the list? So the episode's already out. I'm not going to spoil it. Okay, good. We're good. Okay.
She did. She
All
did.
Right.
Come on.
That way I could retweet. I'm just I would retweet either way. But so Anthony, okay, before we get going here, I have something fun and exciting to share with the audience. That this is the first time I'm getting the opportunity to. So that very first news segment that I brought to you and the world on May 2nd was with Justin from Epic Film Guys, and we talked about in that episode that he was hosting a Scream 2 event down near Washington, D.C., where he kind of does his stuff for movie theaters. And he invited me to come not only, to see Scream 2 with the audience, but also give a speech beforehand. And it was so fun. So because this is also the area Brent and I go to the wineries often. So, I'm down in that area, at least once a month, if not twice. So I got to hang out with Justin and Brady from Epic Film Guys. And this is after 2 years of really being friends with him, through the podcast and doing podcasts. And we got to go out to eat. Carrie, the girl I went to con with, the Mama Ghostface, she came and she had dinner with us, and then we went to the event together. So it was very fun, and I got to give a little speech beforehand. It was mostly about Wes Craven and talking about what he did in terms of making Scream 2 his own, with his own signature, doing Gale, building Sidney's arc, the set pieces, yada yada. So it was a very fun night, and I have to say, seeing Scream 2 on big screen was an out of body experience, especially where we were sitting. I felt like I was in an IMAX screen. That's just how immersed I felt in it. So it was just such a great thing. So now here we are. The only Scream movie I haven't seen in theaters is the one that matters most to me, which is Scream 3. So one day. But Anthony, have you ever seen Scream 2 in theaters?
So yeah, first of all, it looked like a blast. I love the guys from Epic Film Guys. I've been interacting with them more on social media. Do you remember when they did the Scream 4K release leading up to 2022 release?
I do.
I saw the OG in theaters, and then they did the same thing with Scream 2 I think it was leading up to Scream 6 around that time. I was able to see Scream 2 in theaters for the first time then too, and I saw it with the crowd, and everyone was vibing. That's my favorite Scream movie, so I love that you were able to see it finally. So I saw that in theaters too. And yeah, the only Scream movie I haven't seen in theaters is also Scream 3, because I did see 4. Obviously 4 is my first movie in theaters when it first came out, so I need to see Scream 3. I need to complete it.
you were on an episode where the theme was adopted from the I've Had It podcast, which is my favorite podcast, but like, in terms of just like comedy podcast out there. So please, Anthony, tell me, what have you had it with this week?
I'm going to do a general I've had it. I've kind of held it in for a bit, but I've had it. It really bothers me. I've had it with people saying a fictional character deserves her happy ending and deserves to not be in peril in a slasher horror franchise and that her story's over. I think it's just an excuse to be ageist against a female character. And listen, F. Campbell's, I know arguably she is the best female character and best final girl in horror history. I know everyone has their favorites, but this is the character. And we'll talk about it again later with Kevin Williamson's quote, which I absolutely am obsessed with because that's exactly how I felt about Scream 5. But I am just so sick and tired of people saying a lead character of a slasher franchise deserves her happy ending. I mean, this is the sensitivity. This is a fictional character. She is part of these movies. Let Ned be part of these movies because that's what these movies are about, is her being in peril and coming out triumphant at the end of every movie. That's what gets us all amped up and pumped up and empowered. So whenever I see these social media, like, she deserves to not be in them anymore, I'm like, that's a slap in the face and it's disrespectful. But I just hate that little critique that, like, she deserves it. I'm like, we're talking about a horror franchise. What does that even mean?
Like, life is not about happy endings. There is no happy ending to life. There is always new struggles and new emotional challenges, up and down, up and down. So, because these characters exist within the world of a genre reality, right? It would make sense that they continue to have ups and downs where, of course, Sidney's never going to have a happy ending. Like, no one is ever truly, no one gets out of here alive, literally, exactly. Whether it's by the knife of Ghostface or whether it's, old age, like dying like Rose in Titanic. Like, so, I'm just saying, like, life is full of ups and downs, and I think that movies should reflect that. So I think this idea of like she just deserves to have her happy ending, like, it kind of leads into my I've had it. So I have had it with entitlement. And when I say entitlement, I'm talking about specifically the types of people who come on who, even let's just say they remain anonymous, or you know who they are. But let's just go with the anonymous because that's where most of it is. Anonymous people who try to point their finger and tell you what you need to be doing about your life, or specifically your show or your posts or something like that. So for instance, I had a really nasty message sent to me, and like, listen, I'm like Teflon. I mean, at this point, like, I've had like the worst of the worst things said about me in untrue ways, for the past 2 years because of politically charged Scream fans. But don't care, but this kind of like did sit with me for a second. Somebody kind of sent me a very direct message shaming my podcast for being, quote, negative, and that they addressed me directly, Ryan, and saying like, oh, you had such a great show 4 years ago, and the topics you do, I know that the show has to evolve, but the topics you do, it's just so negative. Why can't we be positive? The audacity to think that, and you can just say, well, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is how you need to do your own podcast. This is how you need to make your own self-expression. I think that's ridiculous. First of all, I do the show for free. The show is published for free. Second of all, how dare anybody try to like dictate how someone else expresses themselves or covers things? And like, I really reject the idea that I'm negative, even whenever I'm talking about things that are, that I feel very strongly about. I try to keep a very measured place because I know that not all of my listeners feel as cynically as I do about certain things. And I just find it to be this idea of like also toxic positivity, this like, oh my God, we have to be nice, we have to be positive. This is so negative. No, it's not. If something is making you uncomfortable, that is on you. This is the real world. And like, I'm literally covering Scream news in addition to talking about Scream as a piece of art. So, I'm going to have episodes where I talk about Sidney's character development, but I'm also going to talk about, the fallout of Scream 7. Whenever Jenna and Melissa keep talking about Scream 7, I'm going to cover it. And if that's a problem for you, that's your problem, not my problem, and not my audience's problem. So, with all due respect, buzz off. And I'll just say, like, I can't imagine having the time or the boldness to sit down and type out something like this to somebody else. Like, if I am listening to a podcast and I don't like what the host is saying, what I do is I turn it off and go to something else because my energy is better spent on things that I enjoy or that are vibing with me. And if my podcast isn't vibing with you, turn it off. Like, I don't care, and I'm not going to change me to make you more comfortable. So besides the I've had it, ladies, another podcast and a podcast host that I adore, they said something just literally 2 days ago that really hurt my feelings, and like that I really disagreed about. But did I go into this person's reviews or send them a direct message or post about them on Twitter? No, I just moved on, because guess what? Not everybody is perfect, and not everybody is going to align with your specific taste or your opinions 100%. And that is okay. We shouldn't want anybody to agree with us 100%.
I mean, I just think there's a huge difference between constructive criticism, like, hey, Ryan, this can help your audio. Hey, this is a good idea, versus, I don't agree with you. You need to change this. First of all, it's your podcast.
Yeah.
And second of all, no one's forcing this person or anyone, no one's forcing earbuds in their ears and forcing them to listen to your podcast. So like you said, if you don't agree with it, move on or check out the next episode. You might agree with that topic. I think the fact that the day and age of social media, and I don't know if it's a younger generation or just people in general with everything at their fingertips, where if someone doesn't agree with them, it's immediate like, I can't follow you, or I can't be friends with you, or I can't know you. It's just so immature. It's like, no, let's talk about it. And if we still don't agree at the end of the day, that's okay. But we had a conversation, let's move on. I just hate the whole, like, you don't agree with me, you're wrong type thing. It's like, no, it just makes no sense to me.
But it's even worse than that. It's saying you need to change because I said so.
That's just ridiculous.
And you know what? Speaking of the I've had it ladies, my fave, Jennifer Welsh, she said, she was talking about a similar thing that happened, with her maybe a year ago on the show. And she said,
and I want to say to Red Pill Please Doc, and their avatar is just a red pill. Show your face and show your name, you pussy. Because they just go on every single one of our posts and post something, but nobody knows what their name is. Nobody knows what their face is because they're too big of a pussy. At least you and I get on camera. These are our names. These are our faces. These are our opinions. This is our take on everything. And we are sitting here doing it because we are women that are strong enough to do so.
So I repeat that to everybody out there. And I'm going to continue to do my show as I see fit. And if you don't want to listen, please go.
Peace.
And you know what? Here's the other thing. So I actually got a really nice review recently where somebody says, okay, I'm going to read it. I'm just going to read this one line. It says, but one of the greatest things about the show is that Ryan is authentic and honest. He gives us his real opinions and doesn't virtue signal or play both sides on a topic at hand for the sake of appeasing anybody. So again, I say,
show your face and show your name, you pussy.
Agree. You can tell when someone's coming from the heart and when someone's catering to what's going to be clickbait or whatever, 100%.
There are some people I don't listen to. There's some people I don't give the time of day because I can tell. We can all sniff out the phonies. And like, that is not who I am. That's not what this show has ever been. And that's not what people like you are who come on this show to talk about Scream. Right. So Anthony, let's talk now about Scream 7 and the other stuff that's buzzing around. So let's start with Kevin Williamson, and then we'll go to Guy Busick, and then we'll go to some of the other little tidbits here. Kevin Williamson said recently on a panel that he was talking about Scream 7, of course, and kind of like how the process went down. So there are two quotes. We're going to address them both. So I think we'll do one at a time. So he says, the company pitched, so he's talking about Scream 7, of course. The company pitched it to me because they said, this is going to be about Sidney Prescott. It needs to be about Sidney. That's why I wanted to do it. I do think there's a world we haven't tapped into. We've never gone home with her, who she is today, and we don't know what her life is about. I want to know those things. Oh my God, Anthony, thoughts?
That's perfect. Oh my God. We've been saying this, we've been preaching this for the last, however many months since it was announced that she was, or a year pretty much, that she was announced coming back. We have not seen Sidney outside of, the first three movies are very contained. She was young. She wasn't even a grown woman fully yet. You know what I mean? We had that very 4-year time span. Now, after, and in 2022, we'll get to the second quote, which is so important to me. But now that we have her back, we've never seen her with her immediate family. We've only seen her, again, like, Dewey was her surrogate brother. She's really close with Gail, but her relationship with her family is going to bring a whole huge new dynamic to Scream in general. And again, so anyone saying it's not worth following her, they don't know what they're talking about. This is a story about motherhood. Scream has always been a story about motherhood and daughter-mother relationships. So it's going to be so important. And to have someone like Kevin Williamson, who's been with the franchise from the start, along with Nev, them doing it together, it's going to be something really special. And I mean, everything he said in this quote, he articulated it perfectly of what I've been thinking ever since Scream 7 was announced, starring Sidney Prescott and Nev Campbell. So I love hearing this because it's exactly what I want in 7, and he gets it. He 100% gets it.
The quote of the year, okay? That may be a ridiculous stretch, but like the quote of the week anyways is, it needs to be about Sidney. I love that. And like, because it's true. It does need to be about Sidney. And like, that's part of like, I think a real reason that I think a lot of Scream 7 is going to see an influx of a lot of fans coming back. A lot of people who like I've been talking about recently, the casual viewer, the person who saw Scream 1, 2, and 3 back in the 90s, didn't see 4 because it didn't make a splash, didn't even know Nev was in 5, didn't care about Scream 6, and then thought, oh, she's back. That's so cool. So, I think that like, it's going to be so cool in that respect. But, I love that Kevin admits that this is why he wanted to do it. And like, it's hard to, think of like, would Kevin have said yes to directing a movie where Sidney and maybe Gail weren't even in it? Like, I don't know. Maybe he would have, just because, but like, I feel like that would have been disingenuous. I feel like, in a way that Radio Silence got to originate the Carpenter sisters and nurture them, it only makes sense for someone like Kevin Williamson to tap into Sidney, who is such a rich character. And here's the thing too, like, I think that like having someone like, I think whenever you have multiple chapters of a story, having that richness and the backstory and everything that's been developed continue on and on and on and build on each other, that is where the magic is made in terms of great character work. Like, I think the best example is Scream 3, is the trio in Scream 3. Even despite issues of that movie in terms of the Stab 3 characters or whatever else, you feel like those characters are larger than life because of the development and the way that everything built on each other. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to extract more stuff from the richness that's already been developed over years and years. Anthony?
100%. I feel like Kevin Williamson's the type of guy who he's all based off passion, and he's so involved in so many projects. I mean, I'm speculating that if it was just another Core 4 movie, he would have been like, I'll collect my paycheck, be the executive producer, and I'll recommend a director. Like, get the director from Sick, who was one of the directors. If it wasn't Kevin Williamson, I would have wanted to take on the franchise. But I have a feeling that when you read this quote, it's like, it's about Sidney. I have Gail back. It's just his passion. He's not going to do something and direct. He's not going to return to directing unless it's something really special to him. So I honestly don't think that if it was just another Scream movie, wrapping up the Core 4, I think he would have given a recommendation. You can tell that he's like, I get to go back to the characters I created and make something special. So I think that's really, really, really why he took the opportunity to do this journey with Nev specifically and have her support him getting back into the director's chair. I don't think he would have done it without her, honestly.
So let's go on now. So he went on to say,
my favorite,
there was this big thing about pay discrepancy, but it was also the part. It was like, you want me to show up at the end of the movie with a gun and help everyone shoot Ghostface? That's great. I'll do it. She, aka Nev, was happy, but she'd also wanted the part. Actresses want to play parts, so we were able to tap into that and find a way in. Working with Nev, we did it together. She was with me every step of the way, and she was so supportive and so helpful. She walked me through a lot of it. I hope it shows, but we had a blast. Oh my God, I can't. Wow,
beautiful.
Anthony. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, this is just vindication for me because I have been my biggest critique about Scream 5, and everyone's like, move on. Nev Campbell, again, I said in the beginning of the episode, she is arguably the best final girl in horror history. If Sidney Prescott's in your movie, make her fucking be in your movie. Even if you had Sam and Tara, all that, she could have been a co-lead, but you don't have her, which was my speculation that it wasn't always just about money. Nev is like, she's a team player. It's like, yeah, I'll come to the finale and save the day, but it's not meaty enough for me. I'll do my thing. I'll do my job because she's a professional. She came and did her job, but it's not meaty. If you go look at the original trilogy and even 4, there's meat to her role.
Yeah.
And I feel like even in 4, they had to work to get her back for 4. Nev wants to be in a Scream movie when she creatively can thrive, and she wants a part. She's the lead.
Yeah.
She is the lead, and it's not these people who are saying it's selfish. I'm like, come, give me a fucking break. She is the lead of her franchise, and I think that when I heard that, I'm like, I felt the same way about 5. I'm like, yeah, it's cool to see her, but I'm like, I'm missing the rest of the movie. Doesn't feel as whole until she shows up center stage at the end, and she's not even fully center stage even at the end.
Yeah.
So I think that for a movie that was a requel, she really should have been in it more, and I'm so happy that Kevin had her back, where it's not, the pay is important, but she wants to be part of the movie. She wants to be, a lead in the movie.
And like, I do think that there is a lot about quality to it,
Right.
And I think that like the idea of the part, I think he expresses it really well. I can see why Nev agreed to do 5 with the part, even though it was written as I'll show up at the end of the movie with a gun and help everyone shoot Ghostface. Right. Sure. But like, there's more to it. Like there's like a different life. There's a different dimension to Sidney that's happening off screen, right? Where we know about that she has a family and that she's moved on. And, I can see why Nev kind of saw some light at the end of the tunnel to do Scream 5. But, I would argue, Anthony, like, I'm sorry, like, there's a part of me that feels like the way that Sidney is written in Scream 5, it's almost as though they weren't sure that Nev was going to be back. So they wrote it in such a way that, like, she could have been easily taken out if need be. Like, I could have easily seen a world where Gail is at the house at the end by herself,
Yeah.
And that, or Dewey called Gail instead of calling Sidney, in the trailers. I mean, switching those two things, I mean, like, that's pretty much like all that, because like, even like they go out, like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like Sidney is so necessary to 5. And someone would argue, well, that's the point. She's being eased out. But again, why are we easing her out? So I'm glad that Kevin is kind of addressing this. And I think this speaks to probably what was going on with the part in Scream 6. And like, because it's the part in Scream 6, I hate to say this, the part in Scream 6 that Sidney would have had was she didn't have any interaction with Ghostface. Like, it was, we know this from the Hello Sidney article that was released this time last year. And like, the one nice thing about her in Scream 6 was that she was in the shrine. She was with Gail at the hospital whenever they were taking her in after the attack. And then at the end, she comes in to push the TV on Ethan, which is dumb. And that was it. Like, so I can understand too, like, Nev kind of fighting for some type of quality. And like, again, it's just so inspiring that Nev kind of stood her ground and now she's gotten to the best case scenario. And I think that this goes to show you never know how something is going to go. So you always need to stay true to yourself and true to what you actually want, as opposed to compromising. So I love that Kevin also addresses the fact that they worked so much together, and it feels like a true collaboration, or at least in the way that he describes this. And it sounds like they had a lot of creative magic and fun together while they were making Scream 7.
That to me is the most important part of the quote. And I feel like Nev was probably like, I'm a team player for 5. Again, I do like the stuff she is in Scream 5, but she probably, along with being insulted by the offer, she's probably like, and this is what you have me doing in my franchise? Like, no, thank you. I'll sit this one out. And look, it did serve her well because she valued herself. And I just love the fact that he's saying, I hope it turns out well, but we had a blast together. So I just think it's so special, and it probably even strengthened their relationship. And we'll get to the next story, but just think of how much more involved they can get if they continue on, with this Scream 8 and, whatever, maybe a new trilogy. So I love them together, and everything he's saying is just getting me in the feels, and even so much more excited to see her return and his return to his franchise as well. So I'm just so excited, and it makes me so happy. They're saying the things I want to hear.
Moving on, we're going to Guy Busick. He spoke to comicbook.com, and there is a lot of tea he spilt about his points of view and potential things about Scream 7. So let's start with him talking about Sidney, because weirdly enough, he doesn't really talk about her that much, this is a movie where it's about Sidney. So let's dive in here.
I'm just really again, I don't want to be mean. I respect him. I just really hope that if I get it, because this movie was already reworked 7, but I just really hope if it continues that Kevin gets a writing and directing credit in the future. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, so my friend Josh Reinhold, he explained this on episode 175 about you have to, when someone, let's just say in these roles, if Guy wrote the draft and Kevin were to come in and rewrite it to such a degree to get a credit, it would need to affect the character arcs.
So that happened in H2O because Kevin rewrote it, but he didn't get the writing credit. So
exactly. So I actually think that character arcs will be affected. I think that from Guy's original script to Kevin's, to the alleged idea that we have that Kevin rewrote the script for 7, my guess is we're going to see written by Guy Busick and Kevin Williamson. That's just my prediction. 100%. Okay, so here's hoping. If not, it'll be there on Scream 8 and hopefully Scream 9. So, okay, so here's what Guy Busick said about Scream 7 and Sidney. It's not very much. Again, she's the lead of your movie, and here we go. So he says, I don't want to give anything away about the reason Scream 7 had to be a Sidney movie, because there's a really cool reason. In all these movies, you have to ask, why now? What is the thing Scream is commenting on? Scream is always having a conversation with its audience and the state of movies, the state of horror movies in particular, and franchises. So, Anthony, what do we think?
Yeah, listen, I respect not wanting to give things away. I don't want to be spoiled about anything, but the fact that it's just one line about Sidney and then it just goes back to franchise talk is a little bit huh? But I hope that I hope that Kevin really collaborated with him and made it into his own thing. I just think the quote is very, I don't want to be a whole lot of nothing for the most part.
So here's how I'm reading it. I don't like this idea of so there are some people who think that the rules should be abandoned, or there shouldn't be a forced thing franchises were to Scream 6. As we get deeper into the franchise, it's harder to make this a theme, and a theme that audiences digest, right?
Right.
And instead you can focus on other themes, like, Scream 3 was about Hollywood, Scream 4 is about social media, like, and those are the things people remember, not the trilogy talk. So, I don't have much optimism here from his quote saying, like, what is Scream commenting on now? Scream is always having a conversation with its audience about the state of movies, the state of horror movies, in particular franchises. I'm hoping that this is about just AI and the takeover of AI into Hollywood. Like, that would make sense to me based on his quote, like, and not only like, the AI that you and I get to play with, but like the AI that studios could possibly replace actors and writers and whatever else.
Right.
So I could see that working. What are your thoughts?
I think that's one of the only, because again, I don't want another repeat. I get Scream 6 was like requel 5 and then franchise 6, but it was just a reworked Scream 5 speech. 5, like, the commentary was pretty much Scream 5 reworked. And I don't want to be repetitive like that. I want it to be something special. So I'm hoping that with all these, especially like now we know these dead actors, dead characters are coming back, the actors are coming back, so I'm hoping he's kind of hinting about that. But I don't want another speech about like legacy sequels when we just had the requel. You can comment how Sidney's back, but I just don't, there's gonna be some speech like that from Mindy, but I don't want a whole we're in a legacy sequel because we just did the requel and franchise. I don't want to be, I'd rather leave that out and then have more character moments like Gale and Sidney, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hope it's just comment, like we see in action the AI and how it affects our characters. But I'm really, really, really hoping that Kevin really like sat down, like, how do I make this effective for the characters in the movie? Not just to comment on something because it's a Scream movie, you know what I mean?
And like, I'm going to withhold my thoughts because on Tuesday, we're going to have an episode with me and my friend Josh Reinhold that I just referenced a few minutes ago.
Okay.
And we're talking about what comes after 7. And within that episode, we talk a lot about the rules, and Josh has a very specific point of view that he thinks the rules should just be abandoned and almost like, Anthony, I don't know if you remember in the Scream 7 script that Joey wrote, he kind of like did something neat with Mindy where Mindy, like Chad kind of got really annoyed with her movie talk.
So
and
good.
like, that is kind of like, that's where I kind of land is like, I think that perhaps it should be addressed, but addressed in a way where Mindy either like says like, oh, maybe I really don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, I'm never right, or Chad be like, Mindy, enough, or Gail being like, Mindy, we've had enough, shut the fuck up, so
all right, we're this many years into it, like, enough with the movies, this is real life, like, what are we doing? So I hope it's something like that, just a little something, then move on.
So let's now talk about this big thing that he described about the original Scream 7. So Guy Busick went on to say, the original Scream 7 was a completely different thing. We weren't able to use what we had in the previous iteration for this one. We had to start from scratch, which was a bummer. We were excited about what we had for that movie. We wanted to do one more Core 4 movie. We know the fans love those characters. We love those characters. We created those characters. I would love to see in some universe a continuation of those characters in some way, but we weren't able to port over the stuff from the other story. It was like, okay, here's what the universe dealt us. We always wanted to do a Sidney movie, and so it was like, all right, let's get into it, I guess. I'm just teasing, he didn't say that. Let's get into it. And why now? And why this one? So, Anthony, what are your thoughts?
So this also just confirms what we've been theorizing, that even if they did one more Core 4 movie, it was always planned to go back to Sidney. So again, put everything to rest with that. That's, to me, very important. But I get it that they were excited to do one more Core 4 movie. I would have watched one more Core 4 movie, to wrap it up. It was wrapped up in 6. Like, what else can you do? Sam chose not to go, from taking the end of 6, Sam chose, she dropped the match. She doesn't want to be her dad. She doesn't want to be evil, Tara's going to go get help in therapy or whatever, I guess. I don't know. They move on together and they're sisters. It's kind of like, and they kind of almost repeated their whole arc from 5 and 6, just that they switched it up a little bit with, Sam's now too attached to Tara and now they have to let go, but now they learned, whatever. Same thing in 5, just reversed. So I feel like they had their happy ending walking up into the sunrise, and Chad and Mindy are part of this 7 anyway. So I just don't know. You could, again, and maybe it might be better to have breathing room for those two characters, and then maybe in a decade, if everything's worked out, we see them, maybe we don't. But I just think to do one more thing again, it would have probably been the same struggle with Sam, with dark and light, and it's like you're just repeating yourself. So I kind of think it's, I'm saying blessing in disguise. I don't like the way everything happened, but maybe if you got a third movie, a lot of people would have been like, damn, this is what we're doing again with the Core 4. I almost think it kind of serves the Core 4 to them not have a trilogy arc and just have that 2 spin-off Jamie Lloyd-esque thing and move on. Look what happened with Jamie Lloyd. I hated what happened to her in Curse of Michael Myers. You know, at least the core 4 or Sam and Tara had that, you know, happy ending for now. If you want to say, you know, they can get their happy ending now. Everyone else says that about Sidney. So I just think that I don't know if it would have been as creative to have another movie with them again.
Yeah, I'm going to go farther than you. So, you know, the thing about Scream 2 is kind of an unhappy movie.
100%.
You know, Randy dies, Gail goes through something really traumatic and changes her, and Sidney is left in a very dark, dark place. And that, of course, allows them to all have happy endings in Scream 3. So if they were going to do another Core 4 movie, you're right, it would have been repetitive, because in Scream 6 is the happy movie, right? Everybody survives. Everyone magically survives in it, you know, and they, you know, Sam drops the mask, and Chad and Tara are in love, and Mindy, you know, she's just vibing. And so that's where Scream 2 is. And like, not Scream 2, Scream 6. I mean, Scream 6 is a copycat of Scream 2, so Freudian slip. But like, you know, here's the thing about that. Like, so, and then I've heard some people, even that I'm friends with, say this, and it makes me cringe because I disagree with it. I do not think it has any academic credibility, is people saying, oh, well, don't worry, they were going to kill one of them in Scream 7, and then that would have been them having stakes. But like, that doesn't make sense for an arc. That doesn't make sense for building to something. And I honestly, after the tricks that they pulled in Scream 6, I don't think that they would have killed any of them. I think they would have just, like you said, kind of rinsed, repeated, and we would have had a very repetitive movie in Scream 7 after Scream 6. Like, they wouldn't have made a dramatic statement. And like, honestly, I don't think there was enough juice for a real movie about a real story to be told about the Core 4 that wasn't them playing beach volleyball, which basically is what Scream 6 is. And like, I say those words and I mean them in a patronizing way, because that's how it feels when you look at the original trilogy in that very dramatic arc. You know, that's not what Scream 6 is at all. It's a fun bop, you know, in a way. And like, so here's the thing. So I want to reference my friend Joey Valisi again. So he and I did a Scream 7 script for the season 3 premiere 2 years ago of this podcast. It's episode 112. And like, you know, that features the Core 4 in a way, but it's not a Core 4 movie, because I don't think that it was a Core 4 story. What that movie is, like the real story of a third Sam chapter would have been about her and her mother, and, you know, whatever was going on with Billy Loomis at that time. And that's what Joey did. He brought Sidney and Gail into the fold as co-leads with Sam, and the killer was Christina Carpenter. That is the story that would have been a satisfying conclusion to it. And again, it wasn't a happy ending. We killed Tara and we killed Sam. So, you know, it's like, you know, I think that you're right in terms of like, you know, there just wasn't, you can't do another Core 4 movie that's a kumbaya, no one dies except for Annika. Like, you know, I don't know. Thoughts?
First of all, I love everything you said. I love in Scream 2, it's not a cliffhanger, but Sidney walks off alone. So there's conflict, there's something left, there's story to delve into it. That they even cut the original ending of Scream 2 had a ghost face on top of the tower or whatever. They didn't need that, because Sidney wasn't, you know, walking to the sunrise all happy. I think that if they did do another Core 4 movie in 7, what would have had to happen is something along the lines of your opening, where one of them died, and then Sidney Gale would have came back to grieve them anyway. So it wouldn't have been a full Core 4 movie anyway. It would have been two-hander with Sidney and Sam. So I just, again, I don't think there was enough juice left in the tank to do a full 2-hour movie with all 4 of them again, with something would have had happened in the beginning. It would have brought other characters from the previous movies back anyway, aka Sidney and Gale. So there's no juice left in the tank, I don't think.
So can I just also say to Guy Busick, bitch, Miss Jenna Ortega, Miss Ego, thought she was better than you and your franchise. She did not want to do Scream 7. Christopher Landon said, because he was going to be making your script, he said Jenna Ortega was not involved, that Jenna Ortega was unavailable to him as a director in summer of 2023. So you would have had a terrible 3 movie, not a Core 4 movie. So this doesn't really make sense anyway. So I don't like this quote. It doesn't really comport with reality. And it just makes to me, what I see here is like him just kind of trying to salvage like the reputation of his characters. And you can tell, and I don't like this, like, you know, again, like we love those characters. We created those characters. Like, you know, I don't know. Like, I get it on some level. I get that, you know, it's
bummed out. I get it.
Yeah, to continue the Scream franchise with characters you created, that is a very cool thing, and that you are disappointed, but your characters are still living on in Chad and Mindy,
Agreed.
and like you're getting to write the best final girl ever, and Gail Weathers, who's been who's survived more movies than anybody in slasher history. You get to write them in a 7th movie, and yet you're complaining about it in that way. Like, I get it, but I don't. Like, I think it's just weird, and it just makes me feel like he's very salty that he didn't get to have his core 4 beach volleyball movie.
I agree, and I think his quote is pretty much to sum it up. It's just a what if, like, perfect scenario. I think if it did go that way, there would have been demands from Jenna. He would have had to rework the thing anyway, because there would have been time constraints with her. There would have been, whatever issues, but he would have had to rework it anyway. So I think his quote is just saying, if it went perfectly and I could do this but it never works like that when you make a movie. Things change all the time. So that quote's just like in La La Land, like if it can happen, with no issues. So I just think that it's kind of like I get it, you're bummed because these are characters he created, but it is what it is. Save it. There's a complete arc to them. So move on. Maybe one day they come back. Maybe one day they don't.
Well, I'm glad to hear that him say that they just threw out the script, that there's almost nothing that carried over from
I do like that too. Yeah.
The original to this, because that gives me faith. Okay, this is not going to be this. There's no baggage here. This is pure creativity, and I'm sure Kevin had more freedom to play around with stuff as he saw fit. So, again, and I just feel like, I will say I do like this quote that he says here about saying, okay, here's what the universe dealt us, and I think that I just want to translate that to a broader audience and say okay, everybody who is here's the other thing that I've had it with people who say we have to preface every conversation about Scream 7. Well, I just don't like what happened. I'm gonna miss Sam and Melissa so much.
Done. It's over with.
Yes, this. Move on. I'm sorry. This is the situation we're in. Either we don't need to continue to preface every fucking conversation with, well, I just didn't really like how this went down. We get it.
I agree, and I'm happy that they started from scratch, because I didn't want a script with messy and jumbled ideas. It would have been too much. So that made me very happy. I agree with you on that.
Okay, so next up. So he's obsessed. I mean, there's so much of this interview where he just talks very little about Sidney. So let's move back into the characters that Guy Busick created. But okay, so Chad and Mindy, he talks about their entrance to Scream 7 and being a part of the story in terms of how they're used. He says, I believe it was James that came up with that. But we don't know what that is. He said, I wanted to give credit where credit's due, but it was an organic way in why they would be in this movie. I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say it's through Gail. She's the connective tissue in 5 and 6, and she's in this. New York was obviously a big part of that. She bonded with those 4, and there's a reason why those 2 come to this town and where the action is happening. Oh my God, Anthony, hold me back. You go first.
I'm so curious, because I don't...
What movie did he watch?
She didn't bond with Chad. I don't even think she spoke to them, really, at all.
Literally, she has never spoken to them directly or had a scene with them. Yeah.
I just hope that, I really hope it is organic, he said that word, but I have no idea that she didn't have a relationship with them in 5 or 6. She barely had a relationship. She has a couple throwaway lines with Tara, haha, I punched you in the face, and she has
a nice scene with Sam. Yeah,
it's with Sam. So I racking my brain about how Gail brings them back. It's I really just hope, all I hope is that it's not forced, but I don't see how she was the connective tissue with them in 5 and 6 at all. She was just a character in 6 who was we have a legacy character for marketing reasons, in my opinion. I don't know, man. How do you think that she brings them back? Because I'm really curious. I hope it's not cringy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if they're working for her, I don't really know idea. I don't know.
So let's put aside what the rumor is, okay? Because what he says confirms this bullshit thing that was on Twitter a couple of months ago. It makes me enraged. Okay, so my response was, and I actually had this conversation with someone I'm not going to name, but I said, also, WTF, what is Guy saying? Gail bonded with them so much. She didn't bond with shit she had within her 2.5 scenes in the movie. She's literally never even spoken to the Meeks on screen, either of them. I don't want to I just feel, this to me feels like PR fluff. And it also, do you hear what he says? He says she's the connective tissue in 5 and 6. So he's lumping 5 in there, which Sidney was a part of that movie, and she was part of that finale that the Meeks were in. So yeah, it's just you're proving my point that Sidney, that what you did with Sidney in Scream 5. Come on,
and throwaway.
She did not bond with the core. In an alternate reality, I would have loved for this quote to have been completely 100% accurate. I would have loved for Gale to have bonded with each of those core four in Scream 6 and to have been the connective tissue between 6 and back to Sidney. That is how it should have been, but they failed Gale Weathers in that. And they failed the core four in that, in the fact that Gale wasn't integrated more into that, in their action. You know, there's no reason Gale shouldn't have been a part of that finale with them, or at the beginning with them, or throughout the whole movie with them. Okay, so going back to Chad and Mindy, because that's what we have to do because Guy Busick wrote them. And there is a rumor that Mindy is basically Gale's assistant / producer and that Chad is her cameraman. And that was back in like January, February. I didn't really believe it. I thought that just sounds so lame. And, you know, I'm not thrilled with this. And like, I don't, just to go back to his words, he says this is an organic way that they would be in this movie. And I just don't see it. Like, I mean, Mindy, I could see possibly as her producer. Like that kind of sort of squint. If you squint, it makes sense. Chad being the cameraman, though, I don't find to be believable. You know, I just feel like what he's saying here is like he's saying, ooh, well, we gave them jobs. Like we gave Kirby the job of being the FBI agent and Gale is the reporter. So we're making Mindy the producer and Chad the cameraman. And like it just feels like not everybody needs a job. Like I'm sorry that you know they can exist in these movies without having an assigned generic job that functions as like they're like, you know, a team of CSI or something. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, again, to me, what you just said, it sounds forced, very forced to me. I will not judge until I see it. It's all about the execution. To me, organic to me goes back to Sidney. They have the Meeks connection. You have Martha, who we don't know if she's in the movie or not. She could be a cameo coming to visit Sidney with her 2 kids. It could be, to me, that is something organic because Sidney has the Meeks connection more than Gale. Yeah. And again, love Gale. But to me, that just sounds to have Gale just bring in the 2 members of the core 4 who are still, because we need these 2 members in the movie because they're signed on. How are they going to be in it? Let's have them work for Gale. It doesn't, to me, that's not organic. But again, I will reserve my judgment. I hope Kevin played with that and spiced it up. But to me, it all goes back to like, the organic way is to go through Sidney, 100%, in my opinion.
So I agree with you 100%. I will say though, you know, okay, if separating them, I think that is actually a good thing to separate Chad and Mindy from that forced friend group. And if this makes them relevant to the story, whatever, I'll go with it. But I just also think that like, you know, Gale does best when she is sparring with someone or she has like a sidekick or like, you know, Debbie Salt, Jennifer, you know, Rebecca, you know, she does really great when she's in these scenarios. And I feel like they try to do that with Kirby, but it didn't work because they didn't give them the screen time in Scream 6. So I think that like you could almost see them as like a little unit and like I could see bickering happen between the 3 of them and like Gale getting annoyed with Mindy and Mindy kind of calling Gale out on being Gen X and Chad trying to be the peacekeeper and Gale favoring Chad over Mindy. Like I could see very fun stuff happening with them and like them being funny together and like I could like that. But you know, I think that he just misrepresents the facts here. So any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, again, if it's natural, they're banter and fun. I just don't want it to be like a Joel 2.0 where like, oh, remember we should do this with Joel, let's have her do a Chad now. I just really hope it's handled with care. But I personally think that Sidney is the way into most of these characters. So we'll see how it plays out. And something feels like to me like, I don't know, I wanted a Gale on her own, like coming to, I don't know, I feel like that would have been her cool way. And so I really hope it's not forced. I mean, I don't think that from what we've seen with filming schedules and all that, I don't believe that Chad and Mindy have a huge role, right? But we'll see. So we'll see how it works out. I have, you know, my faith in Kevin. Execution's everything. I just hope that guy knows that. I hope that they really know the meaning of the word organic.
Oh my God. So let's go now to some lighter news here. So Marco Beltrami, I love this guy, I have to say. Him interacting on Instagram, he just puts it out there. Like, I love it. So he has given us more updates than like anybody besides Nev Campbell about Scream 7, which I love. So he said that he's working on new versions, updates to Sidney's Lament and Trouble in Pine Grove instead of course, Trouble in Woodsboro. And that he specified to everybody that he wasn't asked back for Scream 5 and that his least favorite score that he did for Scream was Scream 4. And I'm just going to start here. I'm glad that he knows that Scream 4's score was weak. You know, I think that Scream 1, 2, and 3, the score there is flawless, you know, and 4 is lacking. And that's partly why I was harder on Scream 4, you know, 4 years ago when I started this show. But it really makes me mad that he wasn't asked back for 5 in the first place. But you know what? It is what it is. I like Brian Tyler, but this is why Scream 7 is so special, because he wasn't asked back. Nev was sidelined even by Guy Busick in his quote here, and they're coming, and Kevin didn't get to write or have a huge role, right? So they all get to come together and make a movie that's so true to the roots of the franchise. So Anthony, what are your thoughts?
I mean, my wishes have been granted. Nev Campbell, Kevin Williamson, Courtney Cox, and Marco Beltrami back. I've been begging for him to come back. I agree 100%. Scream 4, out of his Scream movies, I think Scream 4 is the weakest. I don't hate it, but the masterclass of Scream 1, 2, and 3 is nothing. I mean, Scream 4 doesn't compare to that at all. I hope that he spices it up a little bit, but go back to what made it so special. Go back to that iconic score and just spruce it up a bit, but don't try to modernize it too much. Do your thing. Go back to what I want to hear. Sidney's Lament. I cannot wait for that. I'm so happy he's back again. I liked Brian Tyler, but it didn't pop as much. And to me, we had the new Halloween trilogy, that John Carpenter score was so important. No matter what you feel about the movies, the score was A+ for all 3 of them. So I really hope we get Scream score back to the good old days. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. I cannot state how happy I am to have this crew working together. It's going to be special. It's going to be so special.
And the thing about these two, I'm glad that he mentioned these 2 title tracks in particular, Sidney's Lament, which we hear different versions of throughout, 1, 2, and 3. And then of course Trouble in Woodsboro, which we've heard renditions of throughout the movies in different forms. But those 2 tracks really give the vibe of the original trilogy and the sadness and the seriousness and the drama of the original trilogy. And for me, that's what is really the key to getting the story back on track. So I think that the score in Scream 5 actually does a good job of defining the drama and the tone of 5, this new chapter. But there's something about the lament and the trouble in, right, that gives it so much more powerful and more definitive of Wes Craven's vision. So I hope that Kevin gets to really own this music as a part of his tone in the same way that Wes did.
100%. It's just his score. It's just so emotional. It's personal, but it's also grand. I always think about the Scream 3 score. You have Sidney's score, and then at the end, how it's so grand, and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. So I'm just hoping that he mixes everything. Well, he will. I mean, I'm so happy. We're so back. That's all I say. We are so back. And kudos to him. I love how he just answered a social media post. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back, bitches. I just love that. That's how we found out. It's hilarious. I love it.
All right, so next up, we have some allegedly stuff. Scream 8 has been kind of sort of rumored, soft announced to be a thing, and it's soft announced as a Sidney story. Again, this isn't from the Hollywood Reporter, from Spyglass themselves, but I'm working with it. I trust in it enough where I feel comfortable talking about it. So allegedly, Kevin is going to be slated to direct Scream 8, allegedly, right? And that it has filming starting in the quarter of 2026. That's from Production Weekly. I don't know if I buy that. And the last thing here is that this is not allegedly, this is fact. Hayden Panettiere started following Kevin Williamson recently, just the past 2 weeks on Instagram. So she didn't previously follow him. She followed him. So that kind of gives us some hope that we see a Kirby cameo here, or perhaps she's going to be a big part of Scream 8 like she was in Scream 6. So Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that Kevin is back to direct. I don't see why he wouldn't be asked back. It sounded like the experience went well. I do not buy the filming in quarter 1 of 2026. I know that Halloween Kills and Ends were announced at the same time, but I mean, Halloween 2018 was the highest grossing slasher movie of all time. I think that there's obviously plans in motion, but I don't think we're gonna get the official green light until after the opening weekend of Scream 7 at the the minimum. So I think after the first couple weekends, we'll get the filming starts in Q2 of 2026, and we're gonna come out in 2027. As far as Hayden, she's coming back.
Yeah.
She'll be back in 8 for sure. There's no doubt in my mind.
And I think that honestly, she probably would have been in Scream 7 if she would have been in better health this past fall. Okay. So, but honestly, I'm not mad about the fact that she's not in 7. I think that because she was in 4 and there was a break and then 6, I think it's okay for a break and then for her to come back, because she is such a charismatic and talented actress that her presence in Scream 6 makes a difference. Even if Kirby isn't written the best, I love watching her in Scream 6. So I want to keep that freshness in a way. So I'm happy that I want her to come back in a bigger role like she did in Scream 6.
She needs a a media role.
Yeah.
I'm just nervous that what's gonna have her have a media role in it is that I don't know why I'm really nervous for Gail. I'm just very nervous.
I mean,
I hope that they're back, but I don't know if it's gonna be a Gail's protect Sidney's kids and Hayden's back, Herbie's back, and 8 with Sidney. I just really hope that all 3 of them make it to 8. It's personal preference. I know people have to die. But, I'm scared.
I know. I would have faith. Honestly, I would have faith that Courtney wants to be a part of this as long as she can be. So, and I think that when Gail goes out, it's going to be in a big sensational way. If she goes out, she may survive
let's not have her go out. Yeah, let's not have her go out.
She and Sidney may get to ride off into the sunset and be drinking wine in the epilogue for Scream 9.
For sure. But no, Kirby's 100%. She's coming back. I don't know if I think she's going to do a cameo in 7, but I think, for sure we might be good for 8. But I might be surprised in 7. I think there's a lot of characters in 7 already. So I want her. I loved her in 6, but I wanted more of her. So let's have her have a media role in 8.
I think that I could see her having a small FaceTime cameo with Gail or something.
Yeah.
That would be funny. But I think that preserve her for 8. And so yeah. Okay. So one last thing about Scream, and then we have 2 things to hit as kind of a speed round news thing. So there is a rumor that they are remastering Scream 4 for 4K release very soon within the year, and that they're possibly removing the filter. What are your thoughts on removing the filter?
I'm gonna get hate. I don't think they should remove the filter. I think the filter was there for a reason. I think Wes was making a commentary on remakes. Do I notice it every time? Of course, but I notice it for a reason. The whole theme of that is don't fuck with the original. And the early 2000s remakes had that glossy, polished look. So he's doing it for a reason. He's having a commentary on what the movie is about, remakes. And I'm just not a fan of movies that are released and they're part of the continuity being changed down the road. Let's just get a 4K of Scream 4 as is. I get people have issues with it, but again, you can have an issue with it, but the movie is what it is. So I'm against removing the filter.
Or have 2 options. Have one option with the filter, one without. I think it'd be more important for me. What I would rather see is a full assembly cut of Scream 4 where it has the deleted the deleted scenes and the alternate scenes, and I think that would be more important. I think that I agree with you. I don't think that they should. The filter is somewhat annoying, but you know what? It is what it is, and it's not as bad as people say. It's kind of like the bangs with Courtney Cox in Scream 3. People love to latch on to these very obvious things that aren't as bad as what they say, that get blown out of proportion, that are easy to talk about and easy to point out, and and I think that's what happens with the filter. So I think that they should just leave it be. But I'm excited for it to get 4K. I think that that's absolutely necessary. So okay, two things, and then we're going to wrap up here. So, Anthony, it was said, the lead actress of Thanksgiving, of course, the Patrick Dempsey film from 2023, she did an interview recently where she said that Thanksgiving 2 has still not filmed and that they're aiming to film it in fall. And this was interesting because Thanksgiving 2 was allegedly supposed to film right after Scream 7 did. It was supposed to be Scream 7 films in January to March, and then Thanksgiving would film March to whatever. That was back when, of course, Patrick Dempsey was attached to Scream 7. He declined to be a part of the film, and this makes me feel like this is another Patrick Dempsey issue. And I just also want to take a moment, people for the past year and a half tried every way to make Scream 7 look like the problem child, that the production was going to fail, that it was just going to fizzle out, that everybody would just go their separate ways because it was justice for Melissa Barrera. And here we are. This is a good example. Scream 7 actually had its shit together and had a vision and had urgency to be made, unlike Thanksgiving 2, which is just flailing in the wind. Who knows if it will even get made? A part of me doesn't think that it will, because it didn't even make that much money to begin with. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I was very surprised when they announced the sequel, looking at the box office numbers of part 1. Again, it made over 30 million domestic, but it didn't even touch 50 million worldwide. So I was very I was happy because I loved the movie, but I was like, wow, okay, they're doing a sequel. I'm in. I think that Patrick Dempsey might be a slight issue. I think he's a little greedy, and I think that he's either being difficult and saying I'm not coming back, or now it's going to be them reworking their script because of him, and he's going to be in a very minimal role, spread out through the movie or just pop up at the end. And the movie was supposed to originally, I know Eli Roth on his social media, he said it was going to be November 2025 release. So we're looking at 2026. And I also think, I know he has a new production, whatever company, he's got some other horror stuff he's doing now. So I think a lot of factors, but I think they might be reworking that movie quite a bit. I do still hope it gets filmed. Her interview was I hope we film it later this year. So it sounds like there's nothing scheduled officially from her words, but I guess we're looking at 2026 at the earliest, because you can't release that movie in any other month month but November. So I hope it gets filmed this fall, and I hope Patrick Dempsey gets his shit together, because I think that he might be a big issue with them and, money, or who knows, his demands. He is a little diva. So I think they're reworking the script because of him too, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and I think that without him, it doesn't work. So I mean, like, I feel like I don't. It just also, this is also validation for Scream 7. Like, it wasn't Scream 7 wasn't the issue. Patrick Dempsey was the issue, and I think just that's the takeaway here, is that, like, this is a movie where he was kind of the co-lead of this movie. He was the soft lead. He was the villain. He was the most important character. And for him to turn around and do this is, like, again, I mean, we don't know. We can guess. But I would guess, I would put money on the fact that he's the problem here. There's no other reason, because Eli Roth seemed enthusiastic. The script was written. There's no other, like, realistic issue except for Patrick Dempsey. So
I don't think he's the only factor, but he's definitely a factor in the delays.
All right, and last piece of news here is kind of Scream, kind of not, but it was the big movie that came out the same year that Scream 5 did, which is The Black Phone. The Black Phone 2 trailer released. It's coming out. This can be the big October release, like around Halloween. Anthony, what are your thoughts on the trailer?
Okay, I really enjoyed the first Black Phone. I gave it a 7 out of 10, though. I thought that, again, not the movie's fault, but again, I think everything that was the best part about the movie was spoiled in the trailers. I wanted every Ethan Hawke scene was in the trailer. So my complaint about that, it's like, you have Ethan Hawke in your movie. Let's have him in it more. And I'm not saying I wanted to see, like, children get slaughtered on screen, but I don't think the first one went deep enough with the story and what they had. I don't think it was, like, gritty and mean enough. But, man, this trailer for Black Phone 2, it's sinister mixed with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Looks like it's going hard. It looks like it's having more fun than the first one, but it's also going to be way more violent. I thought this trailer was amazing and awesome. So I'm so looking forward to this. I think Scott Derrickson has something very special up his sleeve, and I think because Warner Brothers can't figure out the whole Nightmare, with their estate, the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff, they're like, we're gonna just turn Black Phone into our own Nightmare on Elm Street. So I think the trailer was pretty awesome and pretty perfect.
Me too. Honestly, I was shocked by the trailer, because whenever they announced the sequel, I was like, well, how could this work? And I have to say, I really like the trailer and what they're kind of doing. We don't really know exactly what's happening with the plot, but it's really, it's very cool. It looks very scary. It looks very, like, trauma-based in terms of, like, using the footage from the first film. And I didn't really like the first movie either. I gave it a 6, so I'm even lower than you. But, I kind of like the vibe of this one. I like the visuals. I like the colors. I like the cinematography. It looks really scary. So I'm actually, like, I'm feeling good about the Black Phone. So this is great. So, and Anthony, since you've seen Final Destination Bloodlines, what is your, I know you just did a video on this, I guess, episode, but what is your official ranking?
My ranking for Final Destination is 2, 1, 3, 5, 6, Bloodlines, 4. So the new one's in my 5th place.
Same.
The only
twins.
one I really don't like too much, though, is 4, though. But I don't even hate that one.
Yeah. Well, I like that we're twins, so. All right, Anthony, thank you so much for this wonderful segment.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode. So, everybody, please welcome somebody from the Horror Project podcast, Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hello, Ryan.
I feel like we need to talk about your show. So, tell everybody your show, the Horror Project podcast. Like, what is that all about?
What is it all about? So, this started, it was literally a project to do in lockdown. Can you remember that COVID thing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, when I was going on my daily walks, we were allowed 1 hour a day, if you remember. I would listen to horror podcasts, and I was getting back into horror, watching horror films in lockdown. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, do you know what? I need something creative to do. I've been in a wedding band since 2009, so I played the bass guitar, and I'm used to being part of a team. And obviously that was all gone, long gone. So I just wanted to do something for myself, and I thought, yeah, let's do this. I recorded one episode 1, Scream, and it's still available, and it's abysmal. It's so bad. So episode 2, I roped in my wife, and that's been the journey ever since, and it's been fun. It's been really fun. It is a learning curve doing a podcast and just learning how to do it and make it as good as you can.
Well, so I have to ask, as somebody who does a podcast with their spouse, how does that dynamic work?
So I'm not claiming to be a horror expert, and I never did, but I kind of feel like I push my wife into doing it. So it's like, hey, Laura, you don't like watching films like Hostel. Let's try watching Hostel. And I still haven't got my wife to watch Hostel. It's one of the only ones. It's like a trigger film. But slowly over time, I feel like our bravery's increased over time. Incrementally, we're getting braver and watching scarier things.
Do you guys enjoy working collaboratively together in addition to like just living your daily lives?
I think so. Like we'll sit there, we'll record the episode, and at the end, when we've finished, we'll nudge each other and go, "Oh yeah, that was a good one. I think that was good. That was funny." I think my initial goal was to be like the Ryan C. Showers podcast, insightful, information, deep. You're cutting deep into this franchise, getting under the skin. And actually, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's so funny and so silly." And I try and be a serious person. I just can't do it. It comes out as two people having a conversation.
But that's what people want. I mean, like, there's always, I think that like no matter what we aim for, we always kind of, the way that people interpret our stuff is always different. But I would say, because I've listened to your show, and I think that like what you kind of like described, like what you're setting out like to do, I think is achieved in terms of being smart and analytical, but also having that connection with your co-host is really important. Like, so it's like my friend Amar, who's also in the UK, instant connection, like spark. A podcast with us is just like, gravy. It's like, honey. And, so it's good to have that. I think people want that. People like to hear two people who really connect, and then the smart conversation afterwards. And again, I have to give you guys credit. So for a long time, I had known who you guys were. Like, I knew that we followed each other, but we had never really talked. And like, so I guess like, you started reaching out more to me, I think sometime earlier this year. And you're such a nice person, and you're so nice to me and my show. I really appreciate that. Like, that's the kind of spirit that we like. I think it's important to have those relationships and that kind of camaraderie among people who did dedicate their lives to it. And like, because like, and this is the last thing I'll say, like, I think the fact that you guys also come out on Tuesday, like me, you come out, you've had such a dedication to come out since 2020. I know you missed the year, but like you have a lot of episodes. How many episodes are you up to?
Not as many as you, Ryan.
Pretty close.
160 is the latest one that's come out. So we've got a few in the can, but yeah, it's it's good to have a little back catalogue hidden away in advance.
Yes. Well, but 160 episodes is a stunning amount. So I mean, like, to have the hustle to do that, and like the passion, it's a lot of hard work, so I give you guys a lot of credit, and I applaud you guys. I think it's so cool. And like, who doesn't, plus like having a horror podcast where it's a husband and a wife, not always it's kind of a cool concept to have like a couple, a straight heterosexual married couple doing a podcast about horror movies, like as opposed to and yet another podcast with two gay guys talking about horror, right? So it's a cool take. So I like it.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Yeah, it means whenever you've shared posts we've done, and it does like give me a lift, like, oh yeah, Ryan shared something we've put out there. It's a little buzz, because at the end of the year, when I go on my Spotify ranking, Ryan C. Showers is number one. You are my favorite podcaster.
No way. Oh my God.
You are number one with a bullet.
Well, Phil, you are so cool. Oh my gosh. Wow, blushing here. So
same.
Well, cool. Phil, let's talk about Scream. So I'm seeing your background now, and I see like a really cool framed Ghostface poster and like wearing a red cape. I see the Billy Loomis mask. I see Beetlejuice. So before we even talk about Scream, I guess, what would you say your taste in movies is?
I definitely feel like I've returned to horror since COVID. I feel like I jumped off in the year 2000, roughly, with Final Destination. I feel like, which has come full circle as it's back on the big screen. I feel like there was a large period of time where I wasn't watching horror. And since starting the podcast, I've got back into it in a big way. Like this room, this is only part of it. There's posters, signed posters. I'm at the convention. I'm loving it. I'm fully immersed. And yeah, that's pretty much what I think about 24/7 now.
So listener, just for full disclosure, Phil and I are recording the day of Final Destination, Bloodlines releasing. So are you looking forward to seeing Bloodlines?
Yes. And speaking of coaxing Laura into horror, I was hoping to see Bloodlines this weekend. I think we might have to wait until next week. So I'm a little bit sad that I have to wait a week to see it, because I've heard it's good. People saying it's a good film.
It's very good, and it's very enjoyable. I rank it lower in my ranking, but it's pretty consistent with the franchise. I mean, for me, Final Destination, it's not Scream, it's not Halloween. Like, for me, what really hooks me with franchises is the characters. My producer, TJ, he says, like, Ryan C. Showers only likes movies where there's either a gloomy girl or a sassy girl, and he says, like, the gloomy girl of Scream is Sidney, and the sassy girl of Scream is Gail. I guess he's right. right. No, so I mean, with Final Destination, because there's not really that character element, it's not a franchise I gravitate toward, but I gotta say it's very consistent. It's a very consistent franchise. In terms of like my ratings, like they're all around. Like between a 6.5 and an 8, like they're all consistently hitting that mark. So I think that's something cool about the Final Destination franchise, is that it is a very consistent franchise, even if I don't consider it to be Scream, if that makes sense. So
I feel exactly the same. It's a franchise I go to for let's turn my brain off, have some fun, see some cool creative kills, forget about it, move on.
Exactly. Well, so Phil, let's talk your Scream story. What is your Scream story?
My Scream story is, so I was born New Year's Eve 1983, lived through the 90s, and my mum during the 90s, she's no longer with us, my mum, Carol, R.I.P., we miss you very much. She passed away in 2016. My dad would work night shifts during the 90s. I think Homer Simpson in a power station. In the control room, that's where my dad would be during the night. And my mum was quite a timid horror fan. So she'd say, oh, tonight there's The Exorcist's on TV. I'd like to watch it, but would you watch it with me? So there's a bit of hand-holding, which is a lovely, sweet memory. And we'd watch American Wealth in London, Fright Night, The Lost Boys, lots of vampire films. And I feel like when Scream came out onto Sky TV in 97, 98, I really wanted to watch it. And my mum was like, no, I'm not feeling slasher films. It's not for me. So I feel like Scream was the first film. I'm going to claim this as a film that I want to watch, rather than mum going, please watch this film with me because I'm scared. And I was also scared, like watching Misery with my mum and having her tuck me in bed at night after the film. And I was laying there thinking, my mum's Kathy Bates and she's going to break my legs. So I distinctly remember thinking, right, I'm going to watch Scream. I lived in a very small house with my sister's 4 years younger. My parents were in their bedroom. So I was watching very quietly, very close to the TV. And I just remember watching Scream, just being fully engrossed. After that opening scene, the murder mystery, like I was in. And yeah, I feel like Scream was the first film that I felt like this is sort of my generation. This is for me. I never looked back.
Can I just say, like, that's such an interesting way to say it, Phil, is to say like your mom was the one who was kind of driving the ship, or driving like what movies you watched, specifically like the horror movies you watched, yet Scream was like your first, that was like you getting to pick for the first time, like you making that choice. So I love that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool as well, because before that it was do you want to watch some more vampires? It was very much rooted in fantasy horror creatures, vampires, werewolves. And I think the thought of slashers, somebody calling you in your house, was probably a little too real for Mum to watch.
Wow. Well, I love this. So, would you say Scream is your favorite movie?
Yeah, for now. Ever since I've had my horror renaissance, I think Scream has emerged as my number one. So any convention in the UK, the Screamcast, I'm there, I'm following the people, I'm listening to Ryan C. Showers on holiday. I never miss an episode. It's become a big part of my weekly life, touching base with this franchise.
So great. And I have to say, I'm really happy to have you in the Patreon, because like you're, because like we would message a lot, and I could tell like you had a nice perspective on the franchise, and you had just like a nice energy about you, and a friendliness. So like the idea that you would get to kind of interact with other people like who are in like the community, like of my podcast, I think is so nice and stuff. So, and I hope people kind of take the opportunity to listen to your show, because I think it would absolutely be worth it. But Phil, I want to know, so what is your Scream ranking?
So every time you've asked me this, my heart skips a beat, like, what is my Scream ranking? Because I don't know. I think I've told you numerous times, and it changes every time. I'm one of those people that goes, oh, no, this week Scream 4 is my favourite. And then the next day, oh, it's Scream 2. So I feel like what I do is bracket certain films at the same level, and they tend to divvy out. So between Scream 1, 2, and 4, they flip-flop between first position. Scream 5 and 3 are sort of mid-tier for me, and Scream 6 is at the end.
Wow, so you love listening to my show, even though like you're not a Scream 3 person. That's nice. I like that.
I know that coming from you is a massive dig, and I really want to make you happy because I'm a big fan, but I have to be honest about how I feel about Scream 3.
Of course.
So when I think about When I think of the franchise, I think of it in terms of ice cream flavors. So some flavors are more gory than others, some are more humorous than others, and it depends what flavor you kind of want. But I have to say, I never went on a forum and dissed Scream 3. I never was that person. And I have to say, like, and I'm sure you get this a lot, that you, Ryan, have definitely elevated my personal enjoyment of Scream 3.
Aw.
Like Sidney's story and just the depths of it and the whole Maureen Prescott backstory, which is a massive part of Scream 3 and, like, for me, the best part of Scream 3.
Well, first of all, you being honest makes me happy. So check. But no, and I'm happy to see. I mean, like the thing about this, like, so first of all, I love the bracket idea because, like, in a way, you know, I could say, I mean, my ranking, I commit to when people ask, I say 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. But really, I have brackets as well. So my brackets go like 3, then like 1 and 2, and then 4 and 5, and then 6. So, you know, the only, like, you know, so even though you say this and you put it this way, like, you know, I understand, like, you know, that where you stand with 3. And, like, you know, I appreciate you saying that, like, listening to the podcast has made you enjoy the movie more. That, you know, again, like, that's kind of what it's all about. Like, I love hearing that from people. I love hearing that, like, they listen to something, an argument that I made and thoughts that I had about a movie that I felt has been unfairly treated, right? And seeing people look at it a different way because of what I've said. So I appreciate that so much. You very much strike me as like a Scream 4 person. Like, did you tell me that 4 was like your favorite sequel at one point? Was that like when we were talking? Okay. So you have a very 4 vibe, which I think is very nice.
4 is the very first film I saw at the cinema, and I think you can't really erase that. I think having watched Scream 1, 2, and 3, and having that 10-year gap where it was over, and then Scream 4 coming back and me being just so excited to see Ghostface on the big screen. This is a new Scream, new cast, new story. It's back. It's going to be a new trilogy. Sidney's there. It's all kicking off. And yeah, I think 4 does have a very special place for me.
And then it all got taken away.
And then it was another 10 years after that.
Well, and if you think about it, like, it's like, you know, Scream 4, we had all that promise, right? Oh, Scream is back. Sidney and Gaylord and Dewey are all here. We had a great killer in Jill. We have a great character in Kirby, and then nothing. And then we get the MTV series. And right, and then Scream comes back, and we're like, oh yay, look at this trailer. Sidney looks like she's having a cool life right now, and then we don't get to see anything else besides what's in the trailer of her. So, you know, now we're getting into Scream 7, which is so cool. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Scream 7, and what are you most looking forward to?
I am so pumped. I'm so positive on Scream 7. I think everything that's been announced is incredible. I think as a Scream fan that's an older gentleman now, I can appreciate, oh, Marco Beltrami's back. Oh, God, Kevin Williamson's back. Sidney's back. And she's not just essentially a cameo. She's majorly back. This is a Sidney Prescott story. I think it's really exciting times for an older Scream fan.
Well, you know, I completely agree. And like, I like the way that you phrase that. Like, you're, like the maturity of like being able to recognize like the significance of Marco Beltrami. Like, you know, I actually am kind of curious, like just what people, like what younger, like people who came to the franchise with Scream 5 or 6 is like, there is like my friend Zach Cherry, he once said like there are Scream fans and then there are like Scream 6 fans, like people who really like Scream 6 is kind of like what defines Scream to them. I wonder what they think of like Marco Beltrami coming back. Do they know who he is, or do they know how important he was?
The Epic Film Guys, which is another podcast that I've got into because of you, I think they said that Marco Beltrami is just as important as the Ghostface mask. It's that pivotal. It's the tone, the feel, the vibe of this franchise for me.
In particular, like, I'm thinking Scream 3. I'm thinking of all the music that surrounds Sidney in Scream 3. Like, that is so definitive in my mind about what that movie is, and like the drama of that movie, and like the drama of Sidney's storyline. I mean, like, I can't wait to see what Marco does.
I think a good score can elevate an actor's performance so much. Like, you appreciate the emotion Sidney's putting across on screen, but when the music's hammering that home, it's gold. Yeah. And Marco, I feel like he has been missed. I didn't really realize until you rewatch Scream 5 and 6, and it's just, there's something there that the secret sauce isn't quite right.
5 and 6 almost feel disconnected to Scream in some ways, right? Is because like going from like Marco with 1 to 4 and then him coming back to 7, where Sidney's the main character again. Scream 5 and 6 are almost kind of like getting pushed out further into their own entity, which I think is probably a good thing for them, possibly, and probably for just the franchise overall. I don't know.
I think
in order to be understood,
As time goes on, they're going to become the Daniel Harris Halloween kind of spin-off of Scream, where at the time it was a nice little stopgap, but we've moved on. We've got Sidney back. We're back in business. This is what Scream really is about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Phil, let's go through the speed round. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. Sidney, Gail, or Ty?
Gail all day. I love Sidney. Like, Sidney is Scream, but for me, I get so much enjoyment from watching Gail Weathers be the most sassy, badass, determined person you've ever seen on screen. I think she's incredible. Courtney Cox, like, obviously, I grew up in the time of Friends. Like, Courtney Cox to me is just so pivotal to Scream, and I love Gail.
Good. Okay. So here's a question. Sam or Tara?
I feel like in recent times, the Jenna Ortega factor has worn off somewhat. I just feel like in Scream 5 and 6, it's more of a Sam story. You know, you're finding out about Sam. Tara really doesn't add a lot to the story. I feel like they were building to something in a possible 7, and we're not going to get that. And I feel like Tara just didn't really go anywhere.
That's a really good way of putting it. Like, and so, like, if I were on the other end of this question, I would easily say Sam.
I feel like rewatching Scream 6, I feel like that is a good place for that story to end. I'm so glad that there wasn't any setup for a sequel following that with their story. It does, you know, with Sam with the mask at the end of the film, that feels like a nice ending to their story. And they've moved on. I just feel like Tara we're going to do something with her, but we're going to wait till the next film. And then it never did. It never happened.
Dewey or Chad?
I'm going to say it has to be Dewey. It has to be Dewey every day. I think he is integral to the Scream story. I very much appreciate Chad, but it's Dewey for me.
All right. Next, favorite movie buff?
Favorite movie buff? I'm going old school. It's got to be Randy. I'm a Randy guy. Literally, I'm a Randy guy.
You actually have a Randy vibe to you, like just like your look and like the glasses, like it just gives me like very much Randy. So, okay. Favorite killer?
My favorite killer. Can I give you 2?
Of course.
So I'm gonna go Basic Bitch with Billy. I'm gonna go and I've got to say Jill. And if I could combine them, I'm giving you a new killer,
Jilly. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we love it, and we are going to brand this, and we're going to make a post on Instagram. Jilly. Okay. I love it. So, okay. Next up is favorite opening and favorite finale.
So I know that you get a little bit bored of everyone saying, well, Scream 1 is the best opening and Scream 1 is the best.
I don't.
Finale. I listen a lot, so I can kind of tell when someone says, oh, well, it's got to be Casey Becker. And you go, oh, okay. So I'm not going to say Scream 1. I'm not going to do that to you. I'll say Scream 2 for the opening, because it's bigger, it's wilder, it's really ambitious and so memorable. And finale, Jill, again, Scream 4.
See, I knew you were a Scream 4 person. You should just commit to your ranking being 1, 4, 2, 3, 5, 6. I think that's what it is. So.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do it.
All right. Let's see. Do you have a favorite scene?
So I was on a website today, and it basically had every scene. So I was scrolling through this massive list of every scene, and I'm torn between Gail's chase in Scream 2 or Cece's chase in Scream 2. So I think I will come out with Gail Scream 2, because I think that is probably the best chase sequence in the whole franchise.
Okay. And what is your favorite thing about Scream?
I like the sort of soap nature of it. So it's an ongoing drama that has lasted 30 years nearly now, and you're checking in. There might be a 10-year gap, but you can check back in and the story continues. I just love that they have never recast anyone. A bit iffy with Mark in recent times, but I love that essentially it's the same cast, the same story, the same through line. I really appreciate that these same actors all these years later. I love it.
All right. And where can they find you and your podcast?
Okay. So you can find us on Instagram and just search for the Horror Project Podcast. We're also on X or Twitter. Just search for the Horror Project Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next segment of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers, and I am taking a walk down Cornelia Street. So, everybody, please welcome my good friend, Ashley Summers. Hey, Ash.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I am excited to chat about this.
The city screams your name, Ash.
My God, thank you so much. That's beautiful.
Ashley, welcome. This is so much fun to be recording. This is, of course, the Taylor Swift song of the day, because we get to do 2 songs per week. We love that. So, Ash, what is the Taylor Swift song of the day?
The Taylor Swift song of the day is Cornelia Street. So this is track 9 on Lover, which came out in 2019. This was produced by Taylor and Jack Antonoff and written by Taylor. And I think the consensus is this song is about a love song, hoping that it never ends and that you never lose that person and that they continue to want to be in your life.
Right. So, Ash, I have to ask, what are your thoughts just on Cornelia Street in general? In terms of I know that you are not the biggest fan of Lover per se, but what are your thoughts on Cornelia Street?
Don't get me wrong, I love Lover. It's just not my fave album, but I love Cornelia Street. I think it's beautiful. I love the bridge of Cornelia Street. I think anybody who's ever been in love with somebody can totally relate to this song. And for me, Lover has never been classic, romantic album. I think a lot of people take it that way. But me, maybe because I'm a pessimistic bitch, I find everything in it really dark. There's so many, well, not dark, but she always is singing about, I hope I never lose you. I hope this never ends. And I feel that's a common theme throughout this album is I would marry you with anything. I would do anything for you. I love you so much. But it doesn't feel like it's being she's getting that feeling back as much as I have heard in albums like Reputation. But I love this song so much. I think it's so beautiful. And I feel it's also one where there isn't a lot of pronouns used in it. So I feel a lot of people could relate to it because they don't have to change the he or the she or whatever it is. I just think it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, the lack of pronouns is stunning for Taylor because most of her songs are so heavy on the pronouns, so it's very cool. So I'm going to be honest with you. This used to be a song that I didn't really care that much about. For just listeners, for context, Cornelia Street has a huge fandom within the Swiftie universe. There's a segment of Swifties who swear by this song, and I knew about them, but I didn't really get it. I was always, because I think I like Lover as an album more than Ashley does in general. It ranks higher for me because there is, so the thing that I've cracked the code on Lover recently is I think that this is an album that is mostly defined by anxiety. And once I got that, once you kind of recognize what it's about, and then you add in the fact that you take out me, right? You take out kind of some of the, the flaws of the album. It's an album that's really actually very sad and lonely and anxious about someone's situation and a current situation that they are really happy to be in, but they're very unsure about. And it's a different kind of lacking of confidence. And I think that Cornelia Street is almost the perfect song to describe almost what the entire album is going for, which is this questioning, this insecurity about the love or the situation that they're in. And for me, it always used to be kind of a mid song. I didn't really understand it. I didn't really take the time to invest in it. And then, I knew that Nicole Kidman over the past year said that this is her favorite Taylor Swift song. So whenever I was listening to Lover, back over the past couple of months, I've started listening more and more. And then bam, it hit me in May whenever I started listening to Lover. Because I do Taylor Swift albums by months sometimes. And May is definitely a Lover month. And man, it just every possible meaning to the song crushed my soul in May. And I haven't been able to get it out of my head. So there's a catchiness to it, but it's very, very deep too. It's kind of we just did Death by a Thousand Cuts the other day, Quentin and I on the show. And this is kind of the Cornelia Street and Death by a Thousand Cuts. They're side by side on the album. So Cornelia Street comes first and Death by a Thousand Cuts. So some people think it's one big story, but they're very similar in how emotional they are and how much they are defined by the unhappiness despite what should be happy. It's about a new beginning. It's describing how good things feel whenever you start something new and the novelty. You're forming the groundwork for your entire memory system when it comes to a relationship, a friendship, an experience, whatever. And yet there's a little voice inside your head where she's talking about how she's still unsure of it. I just think it's important. I'm going to read out the chorus just because like this is like, I think it's one of her best choruses. So I hope I never lose you. I hope it never ends. I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. That's the kind of heartbreak time could never mend. I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. And baby, I get mystified. This city screams your name. And baby, I'm so terrified of if you ever walk away, I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. It's the fun thing about the chorus too, and then I'll pass it back to Ash, is like this part. So the first half she sings normal, but the second half, when she says, baby, I'm so terrified, she sings really, really high pitched. And it's almost like if I did it, I was actually thinking, well, I'll do it. I'll sing as high as Taylor goes in that song. I'm like, no one wants to hear that. But it's almost like because she's singing it so high, it almost sounds like she's whispering it, and baby, I'm so terrified. Like she's almost like, keeping it so inward and so to herself that it's almost this big secret, you know what I mean? On top of this alleged happiness that's on the surface. And like, she's kind of getting something that she thinks that she wants, but there's a part of her that's so scared to lose it. It's a very human thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just touched on how I've always felt this album, Lover, is there's a lot of anxiety in it. And maybe that's why I don't love it, because I'm just like, if I am that character Anxiety from Inside Out 2, like if people were to like, people have like literally send that to me and be like, haha, this is you. And I'm like, thank you, I think. But I love this song so much because I think everybody can relate to, and at first I think we should just clarify, Taylor lived on a street called Cornelia Street when this happened.
In New York City, yeah.
She's talking about being in this relationship when it first started and all those memories that are connected to that street, and how being in those places when you break up with somebody or a friendship ends or you lose somebody in whatever way it is, it's just too painful to be in those spots, in those places again, because the memories are just like so intense that the heartbreak just becomes unimaginable and you can't like process it. But I love this song because she just talks about like little moments, like we were in the backseat of a cab, and she says like drunk on something stronger than the drinks at the bar. Like in my take that as like we were drunk on each other, we were drunk on love. And she talks about like barefoot in the kitchen, our sacred new beginnings, this became my religion, talking about how invested and how love just like engulfed her in something that she hadn't experienced before. And I think when you go back in time and see how Taylor wrote before, I think you can tell the difference between the relationships that she was in previously that were kind of a little bit more like younger. Like this was clearly a relationship she wanted to last a long time and that she felt deep love for. And I think the person also felt deep love for her, but it seems like maybe that person had a hard time saying that out loud. And like I have a partner who isn't like a chatterbox. He doesn't necessarily tell me everything going on, but like I find that love in like all of his actions and everything like that. So I can definitely relate to being like, if before I learned that about how people communicate in different ways, I was like, I can say like I can talk to anybody. Like I literally talk to my cat half like most of the time throughout the day. And he's just like, people don't always have that same style of communicating. So I feel like maybe at the beginning of a relationship, there could be a lot of that confusing feeling, being like, you're not telling me everything I want to hear. Like you're not saying I want to be in this. And that doesn't necessarily mean the person doesn't feel that way. It just could be a very different way of communicating. And I really love the line, that's the kind of heartbreak time could never mend.
Yeah.
Because I think even if you move on, you find new love, there are types of heartbreak that like when you think about them and you hear a certain song or you're thrust into a memory, like you're in the same spot, you smell something that reminds you of that person, like you can still feel that heartbreak. Like I can still, like when I listen to certain songs that Taylor wrote when I was in my teens, I can still feel the heartbreak that 16-year-old me felt in that time, even though I don't even think about that stuff until I hear one of those songs and I'm thrust back to that moment, like crying in my best friend's arms over a boy who didn't deserve that pain whatsoever. And I think that's what's so beautiful about music, and especially Taylor, is that you can be thrust into those moments. And I love how she's singing about experiencing that when I think she makes us experience that with her music.
%. And like, I think I'm really glad that you brought up and kind of emphasized this part of the song, which is like this idea of like buildings or places or other people who elicit memories, that were cherished and then turn out to be painful based on how things end or how things, because I definitely experienced that. Like real life, even things like you said, like happened like 20 years ago, one little crack, one little hint of something, and I'm just a puddle. But, I wanted to do Cornelia Street, one, because it's my current obsession. And I just truly, deeply love the song. And it's actually, I think, my favorite song from Lover now. But also, like, every time I hear her say, I hope I never lose you, I hope it never ends, kind of, I'm not jinxing, I'm knocking on wood, but like, it's kind of how I feel about the podcast. Like, the podcast has, in this past month of May, and that's why I wanted to do, because May is Lover Month for me. TJ is knocking it out of the park with these amazing graphics. Like, you're helping me manage the show and doing these fun segments, and people are excited about the Friday episodes and like the, things like the early access and like the Patreon is just like so invested. Everything's spinning. It's with your Wednesday games. I just feel so much future like hope about Scream and about things about like our surrounding Scream, like I know what you did last summer, or TV show reboots like Buffy. I feel like I never want to lose this moment, and I just hope it never ends. So I've been very proud of the show that we've done in the past month or so, especially since I took over the editing and we kind of have done some things, and I just don't want to lose this moment. The novelty is here, and I'm just like, oh, this is so nice. So Ash, any final words?
No, I completely agree. And I feel like the community that you've created, and like, I love all of these people that are in this community. I talk to some of them every day, and I like update them on my life and their life, and hearing about all these things that they're experiencing. Like, I eat a cheese pizza and I think of a specific Patreon, and like I sent him a message being like, I thought of you while I was eating my pizza, which is so random. Shout out Alex. But that's just like so random. And like I think about people, or I see something and I think, I bet this person in the group, in the community, would really, really love that. Or I think this person will really like this segment. And it's just really fun seeing people support you. And I felt really supported from this group too. And I think there's like just a group of people that really have come together. And I think another thing I like is that if anybody was having a bad day, they could easily go in like one of our group chats and be like, hey guys, I'm having a hard day. And everybody in that group chat would be like, what do we do to make this person feel a little bit better? Like, obviously you can't fix those things, but there is something about having a group of people you can turn to in good and bad. And I really think that you've accomplished that. And I think you should be really proud of it. And I think that like I'm helping with these segments and I still like listening to them. If that makes sense. That's a good thing. It's like, I think that's exciting, and I like not being on every single recording so that I get to hear it like fresh. And I think you should be really proud, and I think this is like a really good song to explain what it means to you.
Exactly. Like I love doing this show and like doing the work of like the Scream stuff, and like and I love being able to talk about Scream, but I also appreciate everything that you just said. I need to co-sign to end, because this is a huge part of my life. I have so much passion for it. So, but yeah, we love Cornelia Street, so everybody go listen to Lover, Cornelia Street. Ash, where can they find you online?
You can find me at squirrelandspud9 on Instagram. There you'll find my Etsy shop, memes, different random postings that I find fun, pictures of my cats, and our Scream Game of the Week, which comes out on Wednesdays, which I have so much fun making. And I love seeing all of y'all's answers. And I mean, most of y'all get them right away, but sometimes people will put a different answer. I'm like, you know what? That's not what I was going for, but I think that also works.
But I see it if I squint. So cool. Well, Ash, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!